All right, ladies and gentlemen, if I can have your attention, thank you so much for attending the first of two sessions tonight, two identical sessions. So if you can't stay for the second, that's great, because it's the same thing. My name is David Schreier, I'm school superintendent, and tonight we've got some great information for you. You know, whenever a school district wants to move forward, in whatever direction it is, whether it's education, whether it's facilities, finances, whatever it might be, it is always important to try to involve as many stakeholders as possible. And when you talk about stakeholders, we're talking about parents, we're talking about business leaders, community leaders, post-secondary leaders, and so forth. And so thank you for taking the time to sign up and be here tonight to listen to a session that's going to talk about our future. There'll be an opportunity at the end if you want to sign up to assist us further. There's no reason that you have to. Tonight is a reason for you to listen, to understand where we're going, and if you want to be more involved in the future, we're so happy to have you as a part of that. So to get tonight started on the right track, I want to introduce to you a true servant leader, somebody who really cares for this school district, our Board of Education President, Jamie Belanger.
First and foremost, just thank you to everybody for being here this evening. As a board, we are very focused on trying to look forward as a school district. Certainly the day-to-day tactical stuff is important, but really a big part of why we exist as a school board is to set the strategic direction for the district. And we have been spending a lot of time focused on that, and tonight is really an extension of that. So we've been doing a lot of work focused on our strategic planning in the educational space and in developing some educational goals about where we want to take the district. And a natural extension of that is to talk about our finances and our facilities as well. And that's really what we're going to be focusing in on this evening as we support those educational goals that we've been developing as part of that strategic planning process. So I just too want to thank you all for coming at 5 o'clock. I know it's a tough time to get here. But as Mr. Schreier said, we really appreciate you being a part of this process. We really want to hear from the community and really look forward to having you join us on this journey. So thank you very much for coming this evening.
Now, I know that we are the eye candy tonight, me and Jamie Belanger. The jokes don't get better, I apologize. But what we want to do is turn it over to the two people that are going to lead us through this process. With us is David Conley and Todd Thackeray. Each one an expert in their area, and they're going to lead this group tonight, both sessions, and lead us throughout this entire process. Our first speaker will be David Conley. Let's give him a round of applause.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you. I'm shocked that we had so many people show up at 5 o'clock. Dan said that people would come at 5. I'm like, there's no way people would come at 5. Look at the room. I am the owner of a company called Rockmill Financial. And Rockmill Financial works largely with governments across the states. It's my 30th year working with cities and school districts and counties. The majority of my clients are school districts, however. Over the last 30 years, many of my school clients have asked me to help develop a system for helping people in the community participate in a process of figuring out where the school district would be going in the future. And as a part of that process, have them learn about the issues and the resources and the tools that are available to a school district to make things happen so that the community can make better decisions in partnership with the school district and the school board. So the school board brought me on board to work with you all as an educator to a certain degree about certain aspects related to providing educational services for your students. So I'm, in the capacity that I'm in, I'm actually just sort of a professor, if you will. That happens to have a lot of experience when it comes to school districts and school taxation. What we're going to be asking you all to do, both in this session and the next session, is to consider volunteering to participate in a process to help the school board figure out for the future what options might be available to you as a community in terms of educating the students. And that particular process will involve working with me and working with Todd, and I'll introduce Todd in a second. So the objectives as we go through this process would be simply to investigate the various, to investigate the options that are available to you as a community to learn how they work, and that's both from a facilities perspective and a financial perspective, to learn how the various things come together, and ultimately make some decisions about what you might want to do as a community. Now, I'll say from the very outset, because there are a lot of people that are sometimes skeptical about this process, your decisions about going forward could be not to do anything at all, and that's completely fair in how the process should unfold. So you would have the options to consider to do nothing whatsoever, keep the district the way that it is today, or change the district for the future. And the goal is, if you make decisions about how to change the district for the future, knowing the ways that you can make those changes and implement those changes. And that's what this process will allow us to do. At the end of the day, there should be some consensus that would be gained around what the facilities needs are. You'll hear Todd talk about the strategic planning process that would integrate educational objectives that would tie into the facilities needs. We'll learn about and make decisions about the operating needs of the district and equipment. Earlier, you guys saw us working with this lectern, trying to get that fixed. But how the school district needs to operate, what it would cost for the school district to operate, and how do you pay for those expenses? How do you pay for the operating costs? How might you pay for the facilities? And as a taxpayer yourself, what choices would you have to implement certain types of taxation to pay for those expenses? What you don't know today is something that you'll learn through this process, is that there are a number of different ways to approach taxation that have different impacts on different types of taxpayers. And we'll learn what those processes are. You can make some decisions. So the whole thing starts out with this community meeting today. So this is our first community meeting that we're having. We'll invite you all to participate as volunteers as we go forward in one or both task forces. So we anticipate having a facilities task force, and we'll have Todd talk about the facilities task force in a second. And at the very same time, we'll have a financial task force, where people that are volunteers for the financial task force will learn things relative to how you pay for operations and facilities. And I'll actually be the facilitator for that particular task force. Now, Todd and I have a running bet at the end of the day. I bet him that I would have more people sign up for my task force than sign up for his task force, so you guys have to work with me to get me to win this bet. Each task force will meet independently, but typically pretty close together over a period of months. And then ultimately, after we've gone through a process of investigating and learning, we'll make some decisions about how to proceed and then share those decisions with the school board. So at the end of this process, there will be representatives of each task force that will actually stand in front of the school board and say that we've gone through this analysis, and these are the things that we think make sense for our school district in the future. And the school board will take those into consideration, as well as other things that might matter, and make some decisions about the future of development financing or action plan. So with that, I'll turn it over to Todd Thackeray. Todd works with SHB Architects, and he'll be guiding the facilities part of the presentation. Todd?
Thank you, David. Good to see you all here. As David said, I'm Todd Thackeray. I'm the senior partner at SHP with 35 years experience with SHP in facility planning. We've done over 100 facility plans, mostly in Ohio, but around the country. And these are, whoops, let me advance this. And those are some districts that we're currently working with that have gone beyond planning into implementation. And we were the architect that worked with you all back in 2003 to 2010 on the facility improvements that went here, the additions, the new elementaries, the transportation facility, the Educare building, those kinds of components. We've been working with you ever since in minor roles in terms of permanent improvement planning and things like that. And I've met with a number of you administrators in the past several months, just going over your existing buildings as a start to understanding what the condition of your facilities are. You know, it's down to things like carpet. These are things that gradually over time wear away, and at some point you've got to deal with it. All right. Start off, as That's what we've been doing, collecting the background information, pulling in the strategic plan that you've been working on, and the great educational and vision that you're creating there, looking at community growth, the dynamics of the area, working with the city in Clear Creek Township on economic development issues and planning and what they see going on, and bringing that all together into sharing that with those that sign up for my task force, and I'll give each of you a pen. All right, so building assessment data, again, this is what we've been working on up to this point, pulling this all together. The district has also documented a enrollment projection that will be shared with you. And as most of you know, you are still growing and have been for a long, long time. So you see this going off in terms of a commitment of 5 facility task force meetings. The first one, sharing the data with you, the enrollment, the physical conditions, the sites, that type of information. And then going through a process with you to identify values and goals relative to the future of Springboro educational facilities. And these values and goals should deal with educational, financial, and community issues. And then at that first meeting, get all the way to developing initial master plan concepts. Okay. So throwing out how it is that you see, whether it's nothing new, renovating, it could be nothing at all. You could say that this carpet is good enough with the money we've got, figure out how to replace what you really have to replace. So that's the full spectrum of your options, and they're all on the table. Because at the end of the day, the community has to support this, or nothing happens. Right? That's how school finances work in Ohio. Okay. Task force meeting number 2. Bring back those initial master plan options that you developed and develop them further with costs and feasibilities and phasing, sequencing, those kinds of implications. And review them all through the lenses of educationally appropriate, financially responsible, and community supported. Share existing site implications and identify additional master plan concepts if appropriate. So this process wants to be very thorough and make sure that we leave no stones unturned, no matter how crazy the idea might be. Let's get it out and see if it has a component of that might be pulled forward. So the rule that we would go on would be that we don't throw anything out at the beginning unless there's consensus to throw it out. Keep it in, let it work its way through the process. Task Force 3, review the master plan options again and consider educational implications, operational cost implications and other costs, financial options and costs, site implications, and the values and goals. And then begin to identify sub-options. Because as you start to gel around a number of possibilities, sub-options, you have a lot of facilities besides schools in this district. You have athletic facilities, community use facilities, transportation maintenance. All those things are pieces that aren't at the forefront, but are needed to keep a district going. Task Force 4, again, reviewing master plan options, all those implications again. And finally getting down to evaluating and prioritizing. So as a group, you would begin to vet out options that don't make sense to carry forward to the community. Then eventually, test those options with the community through forums, through staff presentations, potentially through community surveys and polling. We really want to find out what your voters actually think about these things. It's great to have representation in the room, and you're there to represent everyone in the district, but doing a statistically accurate investigation to find out what people actually think out there takes the guessing out. Okay? And then bringing that back together in Task Force 5 meeting, of reviewing all those things, synthesizing those pieces, and coming up with the recommendations to the Board of Education. Bringing in all the finances, and again, this is where it all comes together. So, anyway, I look forward to working with you all.
So this process is pretty fascinating when you get into it, because as volunteers in the process, you'll be going through an educational format, much like Todd described and I described, that will make you as informed, quite honestly, as the administrators themselves of the school district, and to a degree as informed as the school board members, which will set you apart from the rest of the residents in the community. Todd referenced doing a survey, for example, to get the pulse of what people in the community might think about the school district and the condition of the buildings and how you might pay for those. But as you go through this process, you're going to find that you'll be substantially more educated than your neighbor might be in this process. And it'll put you in a very fascinating position when you start having conversations with your friends and neighbors, because you'll begin to understand things that they don't understand about schools. Now, on the financial task force side, that nothing more could be more true than that statement, because everyone thinks they understand schools and everyone thinks they understand taxes. But when you work on my task force, by the time you finish, you'll have a PhD in taxation and school financial operations. You will learn some absolutely amazing things. I promise you, I'm going to try to sell you on joining the financial task force, because no one likes to do anything that's financial in nature. But I will tell you that you don't need a finance background to go through this process, because I'll bring you along and educate you. But when we get together on the task force, we start with first identifying what some of your goals and objectives might be, just based on your current understanding of school taxation and how you pay for things. And we'll create this list of objectives and goals, and we'll work through the process of answering those questions and providing guidance to you. Then we'll begin to identify key resources. And what I mean by that is I don't teach every single class. I will bring in people to actually talk to you about taxation from the state level. I'll have people come in and talk to you about the state facilities program, which is the program that provides grant funds for school construction, and some of you may have heard of those programs around the state. So we'll bring in outside resources to provide insight and input into different aspects of funding. In addition to that, we'll look at different funding options, which might include partnerships with private industry, with additional public participants. And the district is no stranger to doing public-private partnerships in the past. We will look at all of those options as the financial task force. And the key is that we're going to be looking at those things while the facilities folks are talking about carpet and talking about putting roofs on and how much it costs to build buildings. So we'll be building our own individual intellectual cache of information, independent of solving any problems. We'll just answer questions for ourselves. We'll figure out what resources and tools are available to us as a school district and a financial entity. And then we'll start to begin to investigate different ways that we might put those into use. Then we'll move into a segment that's really important in any community, and that's understanding exactly what's happening to the district as we sit here today from a financial perspective. How many of you ever heard, I don't want to build a new school building and then can't afford to operate it? You've heard the stories about districts that pass bond issues and build buildings and can't open the building because they don't have enough operating money. Well, one of the things that we want to do here is educate our task force participants on the financial condition of the district both now and what the financial needs of the district would be in the future. And Tara Floyd, the school CFO, is sitting in the very back. Stand up, Tara, say, hey. She will work with us. She's the district's treasurer and CFO. She'll work with us to go through the district's financial condition, to talk about all the things that impact the cost to operate the district both now and the future. And then we'll begin to put some numbers around if additional money would be needed in the future to just maintain the district as it is today, as well as what if the financial or the facilities task force shows us a facilities plan that might require additional operating money and how that would fit into the forecast, so that the financial task force can say, you know what, we think this is going to be too expensive, or we think we can actually afford it. We'll look into that last word, affordability. You'll hear that come up a lot. We'll spend a lot of time understanding who you are as a taxpayer. This community has demographics that are different than many communities in this part of the state. And before we can move into understanding how much this community can afford in taxes, it's important for us to understand who pays the taxes here and whether or not the people that are paying the taxes can actually afford to pay more in taxes before you ever get to the point where you ask them for more taxes. And that will, I guarantee you, will be one of the most fascinating segments of our entire presentation. And at the very end, we'll learn a lot more about the various approaches to applying taxes if we have to, such as an income tax versus an earned income tax versus a property tax versus taxation through public-private partnerships or even public-public partnerships. But all of that will be information that we'll learn about. The most important thing is when we get to our third meeting is to identify ways to lower the cost of any additional improvements to the school district. So lowering taxations, or in other words, reducing the need for additional taxes. And what I mean by that is pretty simple. Let's say that we conclude that we need $10 million to do improvements to the school district. But through the financial task force's work, we've determined that we can raise $5 million through some type of a partnership with other participants. Meaning that instead of us applying a $10 million tax burden on the current tax base, we only have to apply $5 million on the tax base. So our goal is to try to find the least expensive way to accomplish what the facilities task force might come up with in a strategic plan. And then ultimately take that concept to the board. So it'll be a lot of fun when we get to that point. This is what we're looking at in terms of a time commitment. And that is, we would have a 3-month span where we're going to meet at least once a month to do the research part of our investigation, followed by a 2-month span where we're analyzing that data and understanding what that information means and how we can put it to work. And then when we get to the last 2 months, that's about the time that the financial task force and the facilities task force are running along the same track. By the time we reach the last 2 months, the facilities task force should have come up with some ideas and thoughts about what they want to do. And they'll come to our meeting and make a presentation to the financial people saying, this is what we'd like to try to do from a facility perspective. And it will cost X amount of money to build and X amount of money to operate. Then they leave the room, and then the financial guys get to work on figuring out how to pay for it, if that's the particular case. So that's how this will all kind of dovetail together at some point. So what we would like to do, now that you've heard the presentation, is invite you to consider volunteering for one or the other task force or both, and be willing to do that. We're going to great on time. And just remember when we do this that we want it to be a really productive result. We want people to join the task force, work together as team members. I mean, every time I've done this, this is probably the 30th time I would have done this in the last 4 or 5 years. It's much like going to college. And you don't know anybody at the beginning, but at the very end, everyone's pretty close-knit and have shared a lot of ideas. In order for these things to work really well, you have to demonstrate a degree of respect for everyone on the task force. There's no such thing as a bad idea or a dumb idea. Some of my most amazing financial results came from somebody saying, hey, what about this? And turned out it was a pretty good idea. So we want to encourage free thinking, an open dialogue, be respectful of one another, be open to new ideas. Remember to focus on issues, not on people. But if you can do that and work with us, I think you'll have a lot of results. Good results. We try to encourage everyone to attend each meeting because it's building blocks. And the second meeting depends on the first meeting. So it's hard to come to the first meeting and then show up again at the fourth meeting and feel like you know what's going on. So you would have to be committed to showing up at each meeting if you can possibly pull it off. The key here is that we want to be respectful of the outcome, whatever that outcome is, and be supportive of the final presentation to the board. And if you can do those kinds of things, then it'll end up being a pretty successful outcome. So at this point, we'd like to open it up for questions and then move you into the next part of the presentation, which is the sign up for the volunteers. So do we have any questions right now? Yes?
Hi, we went through something in the community, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. Does anybody remember that was on the other, where we went through, we did not get down to the nuts and bolts of money and buildings, but we probably worked one summer figuring out what the community wanted. And I'm not sure it would have changed an amazing amount, but I don't know if you guys have seen all that work that the community did. How many years ago would you say it was? 3 or 4 years ago. So we had, I don't know how many meetings, we had shareholders from everybody. So that might be something that you guys want to look into.
Yeah, we have the data from.
Okay, you do
from-
have all that.
Yeah,
Okay,
right,
good.
absolutely, we have the data available from that meeting. And this time around, so that it's basically a refresher, if you will, on that information combined with the strategic, there was a strategic planning process that was just completed that provides us updated views on a number of different educational items that will be added to the facilities aspect of it. And you know, the goal is to try, education is changing at a pretty rapid pace, including facility needs are changing at a pretty rapid pace. And the goal is to try to be as current as possible as we move into a stage. So right now, I think the district and the board have all agreed that we're at a stage now where there's going to be some action, some activity that will happen at the end of this whole process. And this will get the most current feedback based on what we know today.
So that was the process that Ms. Inman is referring to was the process that gave us the EPIC
Right.
mission, which is engage, prepare, inspire, challenge. But as you sort of suggested, it did sort of stop short of going all the way
Yeah,
to
we did not go
this.
to this.
Right, and so, you know, when we haven't, in the strategic planning process that we're undertaking right now, and we've built on that EPIC. We've said that is still our mission, we're not changing that. We've added some additional vision statements to that, but again, we want to see this thing sort of all the way through, and okay, we've talked about where we want to go, but how do we pay for it? What does that mean in terms of facility needs? And so it really is just an extension of that work, yeah. It's not sort of a restart.
I've been here 14, 15 years, and education may change quickly, but take it from somebody that's been here a while and has been involved in a lot of politics and city stuff, we don't change that quick in Springboro. I don't think, unless I'm missing out somewhere.
One of the goals of this whole process is sort of the openness of the initiative. One of the reasons that we've invited everyone here today, and we're going to actually improve our videos thing. We're recording tonight's meeting, but in the future we're going to be live streaming the meetings so that people that can't be here physically can actually watch from home or watch from their vacation place in Florida or whatever the case may be. The goal is to really, really get an interactive process going and use that energy that gets generated from the activities to move the district forward in some direction or not. I mean, again, the community could say everything is fine the way that it is.
So on your, it had 3 months, 2 months, 2 months, are you saying that's a 7-month process? Or
Yes.
Okay, and you're saying we meet once a month, and then how long do you expect those meetings? Or like in the evening, or in the day?
Well, that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So the question is, let me describe this. This is really, I'm your servant. So I'm your college professor, however, you tell me as a resident and a person that is employed and has a job, when is the most convenient time for you all to meet? And is it easier to do 1-hour meetings or 2-hour meetings or 3-hour meetings? Because I'm at your disposal. And if we do 1 meeting a month, then we're going to be doing 7 meetings. Now, keep in mind, we can't finish up before the facilities people are finished up. So we want to time it up where we get through our things and then be ready to do them. But more than likely, one meeting a month. Every once in a while, we'll do two meetings a month. Most people, after 2 hours, are done. They want to go home and do that. But I have some people that will hang around for 3. But it's in general 2 hours, 1 day a month. If that.
David, if I can add with this, this was the introductory meeting tonight to get you give you knowledge of what was happening. The expectation is not for 100% of this group to sign up. It's to let you know what's happening, and many of you in here will have the time to be able to do this. Don't think that you're here and you just signed your name in blood that you're now with us for 7 months. That's not the case. But some of you listening to this realize, hey, I got a whole lot of knowledge in facilities, I got a whole lot of knowledge in finance, and I want to be a part of this. Or I'm just, I'm part of this community and I'd love to see where we're going in this. But again, know what, you're going to be allowed to leave without signing the paper. I didn't want you to think you're going to have to sign here tonight, so just.
But Team David, I want 100% of it. For Team David, don't listen to Dan. 100% hold my team. All right. So it's open, it's really, it's very, very flexible, and I want to kind of create a schedule that fits what the majority of people can do with, because I want, we can have as many people in each meeting, that would be great for me, as well, as long as it's comfortable for you all when we go through the process. The other thing I want to make sure that you all know, the only qualifications that you need to participate would be, and by a show of hands, how many of you pay taxes? You're not paying taxes? Call the IRS. All right, you're a taxpayer, so you're a stakeholder. How many of you live in the school district? You shouldn't be in the room there. So there's your pre-qualifications. You live in the school district and you pay taxes. So those are the only qualifications you need to participate. You can come to my.
Your taxes are way higher.
Oh, okay, see, there you go. So you definitely come into the financial task force. So you don't need any other qualifications other than, this is impacting you as a resident of the school district and as a taxpayer. Todd and I do the rest. We teach you all the steps of understanding facilities. You don't have to know construction. You just have to have an honest interest in understanding construction. And you don't have to understand finance. You just have to trust that some of the things I'll be teaching you are things that you just have to trust me make sense at the end of the day, because school finance doesn't make sense for most people. But 1 day a month, 2 hours, most people can swing that. And then in terms of, I see this group at 5 o'clock, and I'm shocked so many people showed up at 5, but is 5 o'clock the kind of time of day, or would you all like something like 6 or 7, depending on too late? For earlier. Flexible. So like 5:30?
That works for me.
5:30? Because you gave it. We've got time. We'll do the presentation again and cover it. So we can look at doing it 5:30, 2-hour session. The sessions are very informal. This is the last time you'll see me in a jacket, and usually I'll have the cookies closer to me than to you during the course of the meeting. So it's a really informal process that we go through. The meeting dates, Dan, I left my meeting dates. Tara, did you guys bring those along with you?
Oh, I was
Dates that we threw.
You were in the car.
I have those on my calendar.
You have them on the calendar?
Well, we've got everyone's email addresses.
Okay. All right, so let's do this. We picked out a couple of next meeting dates to get together. The next meeting is going to be, we'll pull everyone together, go over the specific syllabus, if you will, that we'll go through. And then so for those of you that sign up for the financial task force, we'll get together as a financial task force. We'll set the meeting dates for all of the meetings at that task force meeting, that being everyone giving me the dates that they're available. We'll have the syllabus set up, and then I will, for the few of you that will write your email addresses down tonight that I can't read, we will get all of that stuff cleaned up, and then we'll be on our way. Tara, did you find the dates at all?
I think we said July 25th was one I think that we had. And then I think we talked about the week of the 17th through the 21st, but we're going to have to look, because I wrote down those and I think we were all going to kind of,
Kick them around a little bit.
I think the goal is to, whoever signed up, we would send out a few different dates and times and see what worked for the majority.
That's what we'll do. Okay, so on your way out, if you have any interest at all in volunteering, I really encourage you to sign up for the financial task force. There's 2 sign-up sheets out there with Ashley
Yes.
at the front desk. We ask for your name, your email address, and your phone number. I maintain that database. I do not share that database with anyone else. It's a private database. The reason I need your phone number is that more times than not, I can't read the email address, and I might have to call you and get your email address. But we'll use your email address as the primary source of communications. So once we get the teams set up, you'll be receiving email messages from either me or Todd or the two of us that will let you know when the meetings are occurring. We'll send you your materials for the meetings in advance, so you have time to look at the materials, because there's going to be quite a bit. Maybe we should start giving out diplomas after this is over with. But it'll be fascinating things, I promise you. And we'll have that together. We'll have a nice little communication system put together. I'm available every day from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m., so any questions that come up, you can call me. But that, yes, sir.
Just one question on the financial task force. Is that looking at strictly new initiatives, or is that going to get into the weeds of current priorities and stuff?
Both. So it will look at the weeds. It will get into the very top of the weeds. I won't get all the way down. But in order for us to really have a good idea of how to do things in the future, we have to create a good solid base for where we are today, how we got to where we are today, understanding the components that impact spending for a school district and the components that impact the revenues that come in. So we'll go through a class on that. And more times than not, we open up with people, I'll ask you questions about what is your understanding of the taxes that you pay to the school district. And there will be questions that you might have that we'll solve or answer with everyone in the room, and you'll come away understanding, everyone will come away understanding a little more about the current taxes that are here. That'll help us make decisions about adding additional taxes. Okay. Any other questions? How about for Todd? Anyone to ask questions about the facilities? Okay, well, the game is ready to begin. All right, so sign-up sheets are outside. Thank you very much.
Thank you.